Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. So, if you will recall from my last book haul, I will link that up in the cards above if you haven't seen it yet. I said that there might be another book haul next month, which is this month, and I was right. So here we are with yet another book haul, but this time it is a lot smaller. I think I have a little over 25 books to talk about today, whereas in that video I had like, I think 45 books, which is just absolutely nuts. The first book I have is Strange Planet. This is by Nathan W. Pyle, and you guys may recognize this little being on the front. I'll also show you the back cover. It kind of gives you an idea of what like the comics look like, but this is like a comic series. Here's just like one of the pages that I think became really popular on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, and then he published a bind up of all of these comics, and I think he also came out recently with a sequel, kind of just like a part 2, another bind up. But yeah, I saw that this was on sale on Amazon, so I couldn't resist because I think that these comics are just so freaking adorable and they just make me happy. Next, I've got a few historical romances because of course I am absolutely obsessed with historical romances now, if you can't tell. The first one I have is The Devil of Downtown by Joanna Shupe. This is book 3 in her Uptown Girls series. You guys know that I am absolutely obsessed with this series. There's 3 books and each of them centers around a different sister. This takes place in the Gilded Age in New York City, so that's about the 1890s, and I just loved this series so much. Joanna Shupe is definitely a new favorite author of mine. This book came out, I believe, June 30th, so it's a very recent release. I highly recommend all 3 of the books in this series. They are just so great. Next up, I have 2 books by Beverly Jenkins. I cannot wait to finally read her books. So these are 2 books in her, I want to say like the Destiny trilogy. I hauled the other book in this trilogy in my last haul, but this one, I think this is books 2 and 3 in that series, and I think this also centers around maybe 3 sisters. I'm not really sure. This one follows Mariah. She ends up moving all the way to California. I think this takes place during like the Wild West times in the United States, so I'm assuming the mid 1800s, but yeah, she moves to California to be a housekeeper, and she meets this man Logan, who I think owns the house that she is being a housekeeper for, and I think that there's some good enemies to lovers realness, so that sounds really good. And then we also have Destiny's Captive, and this one sounded really fun because the heroine I think is a pirate, and she ends up stealing the ship from the hero, and that's how their relationship starts, and that just sounds like such a fun and amazing time. So I am so excited to add these to my personal collection. Next up, I have 2 books by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name because I listened to the audiobook recently for Between the World and Me, which is by him, and I'm like 99% sure that's how he pronounced his name, even though that's not exactly what his name looks like. But anyways, so the first one is Between the World and Me. This is the one that I listened to the audiobook for. This one, it's essentially a letter that he's writing from himself to his 15-year-old son, and it's part memoir because it does talk about his life growing up. It also talks about being a Black person in general in this country. It's a very, very powerful work. I gave it 5 stars. This is definitely one of those books that I'm gonna need to revisit because it was just so beautifully written, and there's so much complexity to it that I feel like my mind did not fully comprehend everything, and I just owe it to this author and to this book to revisit it at some point. So I am really excited about that. The other book that I got by him is We Were 8 Years in Power, An American Tragedy. This one is definitely more centered around a historical context. So on the back it says, We Were 8 Years in Power was lament of 19th century Black politicians as the American experiment in multiracial democracy ended with the return of white supremacist rule in the South. In this sweeping collection of new and selected essays, Ta-Nehisi Coates explores the devastating echoes of that history in our own time, the unprecedented election of a Black president, followed by a vicious backlash that fueled the election of the man Coates argues is America's first white president. That sounds absolutely incredible. I have done my own research around this idea of, you know, being 8 years in power, in that post-Civil War there was a time of prosperity, especially with Black politicians, and they did have some power in the South. Then there was just a huge backlash from white supremacists, and so that was no longer a thing, unfortunately. So I'm very interested to learn more about this topic, and like I said, I know I already enjoy this author's writing style, so I'm really looking forward to reading this at some point. So next up, I have When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter memoir. This is by two authors. We have Patrice Khan-Cullors and Asha Bendil, and this is a memoir that has amazingly high ratings on Goodreads, so I knew that I needed to check it out for myself, and I'm just going to read you a little bit of what the blurb says. It says, a poetic and powerful memoir about what it means to be a Black woman in America and the founding of a movement that demands restorative justice for all in the land of the free. Yeah, this just sounds absolutely incredible. And the last book in this first stack is Me and White Supremacy, Combat Racism, Change the World, and Become a Good Ancestor. This is by Layla F. Saad. This is what it looks like. And this one, it kind of reminds me of White Fragility. I do think that it covers very similar topics as that book. It says, when Layla F. Saad began an Instagram challenge called #MeAndWhiteSupremacy, she never predicted it would spread so quickly. Using a step-by-step reflection process, she encouraged people with white privilege to examine their racist thoughts and behaviors. So this sounds like it's a book that is going to force white people to really come to terms with their privilege and how they can actually use it for good rather than for harm. Next up, I have Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams, and this is yet another book that Jessie from Bowties and Books has raved and raved about. I absolutely adore their channel. I will link the channel either up in the cards or down in the description below. But this book, let's see, because I can't quite remember what this is about, because this was one of those books that I ordered, I want to say like a couple months ago at this point, and it's definitely been back ordered for a while. Queenie, journalist, catastrophist, lonely, loved, relatable. Her boyfriend has asked her to leave their apartment. Her boss doesn't seem to see her. Her Jamaican British family doesn't seem to hear her. Her best friends try but fail to help her. Queenie is in a spiral. As she careens from one questionable decision to another, she finds herself wondering, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who do you want to be? All of the quandaries today's woman must face in a world trying to answer them for her. This sounds absolutely fantastic. I've heard that this is an incredible book because Queenie, our main character, is so beautifully flawed, and I'm really excited to read her story. Next up, I got two romance novels by Colleen Hoover. The first one is All Your Perfects, and the second one is It Ends With Us. And these two books, I think, are pretty unanimously agreed upon that they are like her best books, her best romances. She does typically write very emotional, angsty romances, but she did write Verity, which is a thriller recently, and I did read that book, and I absolutely adored it. I gave it 5 stars. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into her romances. I'll just read a little bit of the blurb on the back. So this one is All Your Perfects. This one says, then, the last thing Quinn expected was to meet the love of her life just outside her fiance's front door. A year after leaving behind their cheating partners, Quinn and Graham are in a perfect relationship that seems designed by fate. And it says, now, 7 years later, their perfect love is threatened by their imperfect marriage. And then there's more to the blurb, but I don't want to risk spoiling anything. Also, I think this is a stunning cover. Purple is my favorite color, so give me all of the purple. And then this is It Ends With Us. And the back of this one says, Lily hasn't always had it easy, but that's never stopped her from working hard for the life she wants. She's come a long way from the small town in Maine where she grew up. She graduated from college, moved to Boston, and started her own business. So when she feels a spark with a gorgeous neurosurgeon named Ryle Kincaid, everything in Lily's life suddenly seems almost too good to be true. So that sounds really interesting as well. I am considering doing a reading vlog where I binge like 3 of her books, so I think I'll read these 2, and then I also have Regretting You on my shelves over here, which I think is her newest romance relief, because I think it would be cool to do like an author binge type reading vlog where I just kind of get a really good taste of an author's writing style and the kind of stories that they read and things like that. Next book I have is Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles. First of all, I love this cover. Just like, give me all the flowers. I'm here for that. This is a YA contemporary that I believe came out maybe in 2018. Yeah, 2018. And I've heard really good things about it. This is definitely a darker and hard-hitting YA contemporary. It says, a stunning portrait of young Black lives in modern America. Twins Marvin and Tyler couldn't be more different. Where Marvin is reserved, Tyler is charismatic. Where Marvin is consumed by grief for his absent father, Tyler is carefree. And where Marvin is careful, Tyler is daring. But despite their differences, and despite the poverty and trauma that threaten to pull them apart, the brothers are close. Then, one fateful night, Tyler decides to go to a party and Marvin tags along, hoping to keep an eye on his brother. But what starts out as harmless fun soon descends into a night of chaos that ends in a police raid. And the next day, Tyler is missing. This is giving me vibes of Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson and The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I'm definitely getting those vibes from this book, so I'm really looking forward to checking this out. Next up, we have How to Be Less Stupid About Race by Crystal M. Fleming. I love the pink on this cover. I'm gonna read you a little bit of the blurb on the back because yet again, this was another book that was back ordered for a while, so I don't quite remember what this book is about. On the back it says, whether at the family dinner table or as a result of events in the news, conversations about race are deeply relevant to our lives. And as much as we would rather not admit it, we all struggle with racial stupidity. Combining social critique, humorous personal anecdotes, and the latest scholarship on systemic racism, Crystal M. Fleming provides a fresh and irreverent take on everything that's wrong with our national conversation about race by breaking down the misconceptions that corrupt how race is represented. This sounds like a really great resource for me because what I have realized about myself is that whenever I try to have a conversation about social justice issues or racial issues or anything political, I tend to get tongue-tied. I tend to feel like an idiot. But books like this are just going to help educate myself and also help me educate other white people around me that may be just as stupid about race as me. So I'm really looking forward to this. There was one chapter in particular that I looked at the table of contents that I was like, yes, please. And oh, it says on racial stupidity in the Obama era. I find that topic to be very interesting. It's something that I don't know anything about. When Obama was president, I was, I think, in college most of the time. I was just so absorbed in my own studies, was not educated about the world around me. So I'm really looking forward to reading about that in particular, but this book just sounds amazing. Next up, I have Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot. This is by Mickey Kendall. This book has been raved and raved about. Essentially, this is about white feminism versus hood feminism and just talking about being a black woman and being a feminist at the same time. I'll read a little bit of the blurb. It says, today's feminist movement has a glaring blind spot and paradoxically it is women. Mainstream feminists rarely discuss meeting basic needs as a feminist issue, argues Mickey Kendall, but food security, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues. I do plan on reading this as soon as possible because being a woman, I need to be more educated about feminism in general and what is kind of missing from the conversation and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this. Next up, I have The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is an adult fantasy novel that so many people have been reading recently and loving. I have not seen anyone that I follow give this less than 5 stars. I believe this centers around this like whimsical house that I think is an orphanage for magical children. I'll read a little bit of the blurb. It says, Linus Baker is a by-the-book caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. At 40, he lives in a tiny house with a devious cat and his old records for company. But his quiet life is about to change. Linus is summoned by extremely upper management and given a curious and highly classified assignment. Travel to an orphanage on a distant island and determine whether 6 dangerous magical children are so dangerous in fact that they're likely to bring about the end of days. And I've also heard that there is a really adorable male-male romance in this, and that just sounds amazing. Next up, I have Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This is a book series and a TV series that I've just heard so many people rave about. I think the basic premise is there's this woman, Claire. She's a former British combat nurse, and she ends up time traveling to 1743. And this is definitely like an epic romance series. This first book is ginormous. It's over 800 pages, but this was on sale on Amazon. So I just decided to go ahead and buy it and give this book and this series a chance and see if I like it. Next up, I have 2 books by Ibram X. Kendi. The first one is Stand from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. This book was a National Book Award winner. I have heard nothing but phenomenal things about this book. Also, it's very chunky because it is a history book. obviously there's a lot of history to tell in terms of racism and racist ideas in this country, and I am so looking forward to reading this. I cannot wait to tab and annotate the crap out of this book because I have a feeling that this is going to have so much, just so much valuable information. Ibram X. Kendi is a very important person. He is a professor at Boston University, I believe, and yeah, he is just an icon. I've seen videos of him on the news recently. I've seen that he will get consulted about racism and racist ideas and things like that because obviously he is an expert in the topic. And then the other book that I got by him is How to Be an Anti-Racist. This one I am also really excited about. Anti-racism is a transformative concept that reorients and re-energizes the conversation about racism, and even more fundamentally points us towards liberating new ways of thinking about ourselves and each other. That just sounds absolutely amazing. This is going to be another book that I can already tell is going to just teach me so much, and I'm just gonna feel so much better about talking about these issues with others. And yeah, I am just, as you can tell, I am super excited about both of these books. All right guys, we've got one last stack here. So the first one I have is Black Enough, Stories of Being Young and Black in America. This is a short story anthology. There are quite a few authors listed here, but just to name a few, we've got Jason Reynolds, Nick Stone, Renee Watson, Brandy Colbert, Jay Coles, E.B. Zaboy, and so many more. I've heard really good things about this anthology. I know that short story anthologies can be kind of a hit or miss because usually some of the short stories are better than others. I'm really interested to see what I think of all of these stories individually and this collection as a whole. Next up, I have Eloquent Rage, A Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower by Brittany Cooper. I think this is going to cover similar topics as Hood Feminism, and I'm just so excited, although I do think that this is much more of a memoir than Hood Feminism. But yeah, I've heard phenomenal things about this book too. Next up, I have You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is a book that has been back ordered for so long. I think it released in June, and so many people that I follow have been reading it recently and giving it 5 stars. I'm really pumped about this book. Obviously, I'm excited about all of the books in this video. I know that I am very repetitive at times when I talk about books in book hauls, but anyways, this is about Liz Leidy, and she's in high school. The basic plot of this is that she ends up going in the running for prom queen because there is a very substantial scholarship attached to that award. I think there's also a really cute sapphic romance with one of the other girls that is up for prom queen, so this sounds absolutely adorable. Next up, I got the first 2 books in the Poppy War, what I think is the trilogy, so here they are. First one is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and then the second book in this series is The Dragon Republic. I have heard nothing but phenomenal things about this adult fantasy series, and I've also heard that this is a good series to read if you're trying to bridge the gap between reading YA fantasy and adult fantasy. And all that I know about this series is that it is about this girl Rin. She ends up going to this like military / war academy. It's also fantastical, so I'm assuming there's a lot of magical elements involved. And yeah, I'm so excited to get into this, and then hopefully I love the first book so that I can jump into The Dragon Republic, which is the second book. And the last 3 books in this haul, I have my recent July 2020 book of the month order, and I did end up getting 3 more books because book of the month really has been stepping up their picks. Not only diversity wise, they've definitely been including more authors of color, but just like their books sound so much better now. So the first book I have is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is one of the July 2020 books, and this is, as you can probably tell, it is a Gothic, I guess, romance novel? I'm not really sure. So all that I know about this book is that the main character, what is her name? I think it's Naomi. She receives this really weird letter from her cousin who has just gotten married, and her cousin and her husband live in this house that's like really creepy. I think really weird and odd things are happening at this house. So Naomi decides to go and investigate, and I think she ends up living at this house with her cousin and her cousin's husband. I've also heard really great things about this book. It does take place in the 1950s in Mexico, and I've never read a Gothic novel, I don't think, so I'm really interested to get into that genre. Next up, I have The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Junanda Petrus. I'm pretty sure that is how her name is pronounced. And this is a YA novel. First of all, can we just talk about the stunning cover? Like, you already know purple is my favorite color, so I'm just here for this. Anyways, this is a sapphic romance about this girl, Audrey, I think is her name. She's from Trinidad and she ends up moving to the United States with her father, and then this girl, Mabel, who is from the United States, and it's their romance. It sounds really cute. And last but certainly not least, I got a hard copy of What You Wish For by Catherine Center. This is her newest release. It came out July 14th, and I'm a little mad at myself that I didn't get a chance to read my e-arc before this was released, but I am really excited to have my own physical copy. So yeah, I definitely plan on reading this before July is over. I've read Things You Save in a Fire, absolutely loved it, so I can't wait to get into this one. I think this centers around a librarian. Yes, it's about Samantha. She's a school librarian who loves her job, the kids, and her school family with passion and a joy for living, but she wasn't always that way. Duncan Carpenter is the new school principal who lives by rules and regulations, guided by the knowledge that bad things can happen, but he wasn't always that way. And I think this is a second chance romance between the two of them. The plot sounds amazing. Like I said, I just need to read this before July is over. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this book haul. Definitely leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up in this video. Also would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and thank you in advance if you do. And with that being said, that is going to be it for this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!